Good evening. Mr. DeMille, would you kindly lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Heilman,
Here.
Councilmember Horvath,
Here.
Councilmember Meister,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem D'Amico,
Yes.
and Mayor Duran is absent tonight. He informed us that he would not be attending the meeting tonight due to health reasons, and he is formally relinquishing his duties as mayor. And we have a quorum.
Thank you. Yvonne, may I have a report of the closed session agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight's regular meeting was called to order at 6 o'clock. There were no public comments on the closed session agenda. 2 items were added to the closed session agenda by virtue of them arising after the posting of the agenda for this meeting. One, a matter of threatened litigation, and the other, a matter of pending litigation, the BPREP versus City of West Hollywood lawsuit. No reportable action taken in closed session this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Are there any adjournment motions this evening?
Yes, I have 2. First, I would request that we adjourn in memory of Irv Crane.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, we have the approval of the agenda first.
Oh, I apologize. Excuse me. Are there any changes to the agenda from you? Okay.
Yes, staff is requesting in regards to item 2L, which is the recommendations for funding augmentations for substance abuse treatment services. There was a typo in the first recommendation, which is to approve amendment number 3 to the Safe Refuge contract. The amount listed in the staff report is $18,864, and it should be $18,684. And so with that change, staff is requesting that you approve that item.
Okay. Any changes from my colleagues?
I'd like to pull item 2O for separate discussion.
Okay. That's informational materials for block-by-block security ambassadors.
Yes.
All right. Item 2O. Any other changes? All right. Seeing no other changes, can we have a motion? We have a motion and a second to approve and adopt the agenda. All right. Thank you very much. Any adjournment motions? Why don't we go back to you, Councilmember Heilman?
Yes, thank you, John. I would request that we adjourn in memory of Irv Crane. He is the father of our employee Leslie Eisenberg in our social services division. He passed away yesterday suddenly. He was 92 years old. He was a longtime resident of Southern California. He's survived by his wife, his children, and grandchildren. I'd also request that we adjourn in memory of David Mitchell. David was a very, very long-time city employee with the Facilities and Field Services Division. He actually began serving the community before we became a city. He was an employee of the county who worked here in West Hollywood. He became a city employee officially when we incorporated in 1984 and took over those responsibilities. He is warmly remembered by all of his coworkers. He was one of the most dependable and hardworking people. He was always friendly. Many people in the city probably didn't know him by name, but he was always in charge of setting up the facilities, breaking down the facilities, making sure that everything got cleaned up afterwards. He's going to be missed greatly. He passed away just last week, and I would request we adjourn in his honor and memory.
Without objection. Councilmember Horvath?
Thank you. First, I'd like to adjourn in memory of Michael Clark Ziggy Luthern, who is known to many as Ziggy, was the father of Melanie Luthern Allen, our state senator Ben Allen's wife. He taught all of his children a love for the great outdoors and preached to them about the value of a good education. And he will be remembered as a polite and kind man, and we extend our condolences to their family. I'd also like to adjourn in memory of Molly Schroeder, who's the aunt to Robin Ritter Simon, former president of National Women's Political Caucus and activist locally here in the community. She lived a beautiful life and passed away peacefully at home with her family after having suffered from lupus for many years. And that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Meister? I would like to adjourn in the memory of Charles Kinsley. He was a man widely known in West Hollywood for his long-time service at a local business, the Motherlode, here in the heart of West Hollywood's gay bar district. Kinsley was a fixture since the early 1990s. He had several jobs at places, many of which no longer exist, like Ruby Rosa, Eat Well, the dance club Axis. He was well loved by many people throughout our community, and he will be sorely missed without objection. Thank you very much. I don't think we have any presentations this evening. Nope. All right. Next up is public comments. We value your public comments, but pursuant to the Brown Act, we cannot take action on any items that are raised. At tonight's meeting, the public comment period is limited to 20 minutes, with 2 minutes allocated for each person who speaks. We'll begin with Cynthia Chavez, to be followed by Robert Morrison. Ms. Chavez?
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Chavez, and I'm the grant writer and contract administrator for Safe Refuge. We are a Long Beach-based treatment facility that is also contracted with the City of West Hollywood to provide residential treatment services along with transitional housing for West Hollywood community members. So we submitted a request for funds through the savings that were reflected from the substance abuse funds, and we requested to receive funds to cover our outreach staff, our outreach staff's mileage, and some outreach material to provide to community members during outreach encounters. So we are excited that we're going to be able to be funded for these services that have happened even through the transition of Drug Medi-Cal. We are now going to be we're hoping that we'd be able to use these funds in order to cover our outreach expenses. So we look forward to continuing our relationship with the City of West Hollywood.
Thank you, Ms. Chavez. Robert Morrison, to be followed by Keith Starr.
Good evening, council members. I'm Robert Morrison. I'm the Director of Programs at Housing Works. We've partnered with your city for about 7 years to work with the most vulnerable residents of your community who are homeless. We provide permanent supportive housing with intensive case management services. We're incredibly appreciative of the support that your city has provided, both financially and in understanding the depth and intensity required by our work with chronically homeless people. Tonight, you have an opportunity to assist us in meeting an urgent need faced by the formerly homeless West Hollywood community members that we serve. So often our participants have been left with too few people to trust and a fierce need to protect their privacy and dignity, but often they also need help maintaining their homes with simple tasks such as cleaning, cooking, shopping, but the systems that the county provides to meet these needs are impersonal and treat people as little more than a number. Together, we have the opportunity to fund temporary and home supportive services so we can eliminate some red tape for our participants, help them get someone in their home right now to help them clean and take care of their place. As anyone who's watched, the Tidying Up show in Marie Kondo, you know that just having a clean place can really offer a great place to improve your life. So that's what we hope to do to help our participants create some positive change in their lives. Thanks for your time and consideration tonight as you continue to demonstrate how your city is a community that cares. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Keith Starr, to be followed by Samantha Ponteria. Ponteria, pardon me, Samantha Ponteria.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Keith Starr. I'm the director of Tarzana Treatment Center's inpatient psychiatric and medical detoxification programs. We've been providing services to the community of West Hollywood for many years overall, and recently we were looking at, with the Human Services Commission, to look at different funding sources to provide more wraparound services for the members of the West Hollywood community in discharge planning, in outreach, as well as substance use disorder and mental health services. So we really appreciate you allowing us to continue to provide that support to the community, and anything else that we can do to help we're very grateful for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Samantha Ponteria, to be followed by Diane Schneider.
Hello, my name is Samantha Renteria. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be here. I work at Disability Community Resource Center. I'm one of the program manager who oversees the West Hollywood program. The services that we provide is home modification, assistive technology, personal assistance, employment assistance. Sorry, can you hear me? Sorry. I'm just here to say thank you for supporting the center. We were awarded additional funds, and these funds are going to go towards the Home Secure program that we have through the West Hollywood program. And what this does provides occupational therapist assistance, evaluations, also medical equipment like a toilet seat riser, a walker, a medical bed, and also home modification, so we can work with the contractor to widen the door, install handrails, grab bars, chair lifts, and ramps. So again, thank you for supporting us and awarding these additional funds so we can support our West Hollywood members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Diane Schneider, to be followed by Lika Litt.
Hi, I'm Diane Schneider. I'm the Food and Nutrition Director for Jewish Family Service. We serve a very hearty lunch at 4 West Hollywood meal sites, Monday through Friday, and we also deliver homebound meals to the more homebound clients, and over 100 clients 7 days per week. Council, thank you for considering staff's recommendation to augment the Jewish Family Service nutrition budget. The requested 120 cases of Ensure would support 5 very frail homebound clients that continue to lose weight even with the meals that we serve due to their poor appetites. Ensure is the most successful way to curb this weight loss, and at the same time offer increased calories, protein, vitamins, and minerals. Clients would be encouraged to drink the Ensure 2 times a day to supplement their meals. So thank you for considering this.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lika Litt, to be followed by Gary Bowie.
Hello, my name is Lika Litt, and I'm a clinical supervisor at West Hollywood Comprehensive Service Center. It's a program of Jewish Family Service of Los Angeles. I'm here today to speak in support of staff and commission's recommendation and share a summary of the services our program would be providing with the extra $8,500 funding we received for these unmet needs. We have equally divided this amount between Urgent Needs Fund and homemaking services. Clients with urgent needs ask for help to pay with their utility bills, cover their expenses when they move, or purchasing medical devices when it's not covered by medical insurance. Just last week, we were able to help to buy a light wheelchair for a client whose insurance didn't cover it, and client was not able to pay on his own. We can now increase the amount we can spend on each client. Previously, we were able to spend up to $300 per client. Now we can spend up to $500. And very often, 350 was not enough to cover the cost of relocation or to purchase new mattress or new refrigerator for a client. So I'm very excited that now we can fully assist clients with their needs. Through Homemaking Fund, we help our ongoing clients and new clients with personal care assistance, with house cleaning, with escort to doctors, and respite for the caregivers. With the new relocation funds, we are able to increase hours for our most needy and vulnerable clients and who are not eligible for in-home supportive services through government. I would like to express how incredibly grateful and appreciative we are for this increased funds and for your ongoing support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gary Bowie to be followed by Becky Harden.
Good evening, council members. Gary Bowie, Executive Director of Being Live. We want to thank you for considering us for the budget augmentation for our programs. Specifically, the two programs we're looking at are the dinner movie, which is an isolation socialization enhancement program for our clients, and also our mental health program, the Dignity Plus. Since we provide mental health over the 12 to 16 week average, we have an unlimited number of weeks that our clients can remain in care. Since 2013, our total number of clients we've helped has gone up by 2.5-fold. Last year, ending September 30th, we finished servicing deliveries of services of 25,744 compared to last year of 23,588. That's a significant increase. When we consider those people who are in care, 65% of those in care are self-sufficient, but we service those, the 35% who engage in Being Live programs who are working towards self-sufficiency. So they rely upon us for a lot of things, including mental health, social service navigation, an array of integrated care to enhance their biomedical care, to increase their engagement and ensure an improved health outcome. One of the programs that we're most proud of that this program is allowing us to start again is the Movie and Dinner program, which was created by Becky Harden, which she'll explain to you in more detail next. And we want to thank the Social Services Department, David Juni, Derek Murray, and the staff for considering the budget augmentation that is presented before you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Becky Harden to be followed by Yola Dore.
Good evening. My name is Becky Harden. I'm an HIV navigator and a community outreach manager with Being Alive Los Angeles. In July of 2016, we were informed that Men's Film Night was going to take a little break. I suggested to my executive director and program manager that we should try another model for the support group, dinner and a movie. A movie paired with a thematically linked dinner might just help build the numbers that the heavy content of Men's Film Night just wasn't delivering. But it's more than just a dinner, even to our food insecure clients. And it's more than just a movie to our clients that never get to see films in the theater, much less have cable or streaming devices at home. It's about connection, real social connection beyond the regular support group model. So here's a bit of what you'd be supporting. It's celebrating Thanksgiving dinner as a dinner in a movie family. For some, it's their first Thanksgiving dinner in years, watching planes, trains, and automobiles. And that magic moment when clients burst out laughing at the antics on screen and turn to each other in a darkened room, connect, and share laughter together. And it continues for the rest of the night, and in the post-movie discussion, and in the lobby while leaving. It's experiencing the Rocky Horror Picture Show with all the props and callback lines, watching clients who often complain about aches and pains, finding energy to time warp one more time. It's their laughter about having meatloaf for dinner and schooling a younger client for eating his toast instead of throwing it. It's the post-movie discussion where clients share where they were and who they were in 1975 before the dawn of AIDS, and how the movie helped them authentically express themselves. It's beautiful and powerful to see it all unfold. So thank you once again for believing in Being Alive and the Dinner and the Movie program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yola Dore to be followed by Tom DeMille.
Good evening, Council. Yola Dore, West Hollywood. I want to speak from a different perspective about our social services. We have one of the best programs anywhere throughout the country, but in fact, we're now faced with a new challenge. And that challenge is good in some respects. Minimum wage is being increased. Therefore, the agencies that do business with us and will be doing business with us through the year 2022 are faced with new challenges, challenges that maybe some did not put in their budgets. The challenges, for example, are in-home services that some of the people mentioned here, the price going the hourly wage from $18 or $19 an hour to $24 an hour. What does that mean to our agencies providing this service? It means they cannot give service to as many people. And we don't want that to happen. So when we look at those with catastrophic illnesses and those in dire financial need, aging in place, and those with HIV/AIDS, cancer, MS, and other catastrophic illnesses, we want them to be able to live the West Hollywood dream. So please help me and think about it tonight and in the future and agendize a topic, if you will, increasing that budget. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Dore. Tom DeMille to be followed by Eric Schmidt. And Tom, before you begin, it looks like we have 7 or 8 or 9 or 13 people left. Did we just want to keep going? All right, we're going to keep going.
I can talk fast.
Yes, we know that about you.
My name is Tom DeMille. I'm on the ballot tomorrow for the 5th time. I think I've enjoyed this a little bit more. I don't think that we've reached out to the voters. I don't think that we're going to have more than 18% turnout tomorrow. It's sad. This is a defining moment, I think, in our city's history, from the time in '84 till now. I mean, where are we going? Is there a plan? Are you going to tell the residents what you're doing? Are you going to ask for their advice? When is that going to happen? We're all, I don't know. You apologize for painting your face black. No, I'll never apologize for that, sir. I have to encounter a heckler, excuse me. I might have to ask the city clerk for some extra time, or maybe I'll take a time out.
Tom, please address us, and we'll make sure that you're not heckled, and I apologize on behalf of the audience. Please let the speakers speak. If you'd like to speak, you can fill out a form, and we'd be happy to listen.
It reminds me, though, the place is a mess. The city's a mess. The streets are a mess. It's dark. It's dangerous. It gets bad every time the sun goes down. It changes. Have you stood on the corner and watched it, how it changed? Changes every night. I don't like it. The residents don't like it. Will they turn out? I'll tell you what I'll do. If you elect me tomorrow, then I will hold 3 days of town hall meetings. Starting a week after the election, we'll have 3 town hall meetings to come together as a community to tell this council and my council what you want us to do and what direction you'd like us to take. And please leave Mayor Duran alone. It's like none of your business. Let the courts decide that. Let the courts decide that. And I haven't heard any courts or anything. So, you know, you just need to mind your own business sometimes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
And vote Tom DeMille tomorrow on Election Day. Thank you.
Eric John Schmidt will be followed by Robert Oliver.
Good evening, Your Honor and Council. My name is Eric John Schmidt, long-term resident of West Hollywood. My first name is Eric John. I do not have a middle name, but you can call me Eric. Anyway, I'm going to talk about some other things different. I think the corner of Santa Monica, Crescent Heights land should be used for a senior housing development, like we can use Triangle Square in Hollywood as an example. I also think that the old Aaron Brothers property should be used as city offices for services where people walk into and need to fill out forms or whatever. I think closing Gelson's because their contract is up would be foolish because there's a lot of jobs involved that they would be losing. I am against bringing the subway to West Hollywood because the cost is way too much and maintaining the cost would be way too much. And it would bring more crime, more homeless, and more hate crime to West Hollywood. I think we should cut our losses and get out of that. I'd like to say good luck to all 11 people running tomorrow. I hope we get a couple of new faces on City Council so the residents won't be held hostage by out-of-state developers anymore. I'd like to say at this point, official announcement, if I don't win tomorrow, I will run in 2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Robert Oliver to be followed by Will Hackner.
Good evening, council members. My name is Robert Oliver. I'm here once again to ask council to take action tonight to hold Councilmember Duran accountable for his pattern of disturbing behavior. As a progressive city, we cannot continue to give a pass to our representative who consistently demonstrates bad behavior, poor judgment, and offensive language. It takes extreme courage to come forward and stand up to someone in power, and the victims have spoken. It is now our time to protect them and show them that we care. We have enough information, enough allegations, and enough inappropriate statements by John Duran himself to act. He has shown a total inability or unwillingness to take responsibility for his actions. As a politician and a criminal defense attorney, he has attempted to deflect and distract, but we will not be distracted, and we will hold him accountable. His behavior continues to reflect poorly on the residents of West Hollywood, who are here tonight to say enough is enough. Even many of his friends have spoken out and said as much. Mr. Duran, stepping down as mayor is not enough. We ask that you also resign your position on the council. It's time for you to put West Hollywood first and stop putting John Duran first. It's time to stop playing the victim and take responsibility for your own words and actions. It's time to rise above the actions and rhetoric of our nation's president, but rather to show him an example of the progressive city and our values. You've done many great things for West Hollywood, but your actions continue to harm our community. Please protect your legacy and resign.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Will Hackner to be followed by Bobby Edrick.
Good evening, council. Thank you for having me. My name is Will Hackner. I'm the owner of Varsity Gay League. We're the largest LGBTQ recreational sports organization in California. I'm here today also to speak out against John Duran and request for him to step down from elected office. I'm a local business owner. I represent 7,000 Los Angeles residents, 1,200 of them that live in West Hollywood. I bring hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue to this city every year. I partner with dozens of local businesses and nonprofits. And my work is 100% involved with the queer community. We respect it, we cultivate it, and we protect it. I'm embarrassed that one of our elected officials, who prides himself on queer advocacy, has become synonymous with men like Kevin Spacey and Bryan Singer. He has become a punchline. He has literally become a punchline to this community that we represent. That is so disappointing, and we should be better than this. I want to be clear that everyone has the right to be heard, and everyone is innocent until the facts are laid out. However, it's apparent that he feels no remorse for his behavior. You can see from his interviews and his statements, they've reflected his opinions about his actions. And that is extremely disappointing for a man who's prided himself on HIV advocacy for queer rights and for this city. He can't look past the end of his own arrogance and realize that the embarrassment that he's created in his own backyard. When this council unanimously voted to have Trump's star on the Walk of Fame removed, The council cited disturbing treatment of women and other actions that do not meet the shared values of the city of West Hollywood, the region, state, and country. Does this mean that racial slurs, multiple sexual accusations, a massive cash settlement, and blaming everyone else for his mistakes but himself is a shared value that this city endorses, that this council endorses? You guys advocate for a starter removed for much less. I understand that he wants to keep his job. I also understand that he believes he's a victim. Perhaps if he had handled the accusations a little bit cleaner, it would have been better. But he needs to go, and he needs to step down.
Thank you, Mr. Hackner. Bobby Edrick, to be followed by Christopher Bowen.
Good evening. Bobby Edrick, 40-year resident of West Hollywood. As captain of the Norma Triangle Watch, I am here tonight to encourage residents to vote on March 5th in support of the Arts Club. The Arts Club intends to open their first United States location here in West Hollywood, a very prestigious win for our city and for our vision of the Sunset Strip. It will remove and replace the Hustler store, and along with the city's desire to preserve both the history and future of the Sunset Strip. Funding will be provided to help reduce traffic and noise and provide extensive landscaping as well as funding for affordable housing. The Arts Club will also pay their employees well above the minimum wage and will be given extensive benefits, including flexible work hours and child care. There is overwhelming response in support of this project from the Norma Triangle residents, the planning commissioners, and the council members. It is now up to the residents of West Hollywood and neighbors in the neighboring areas to support the Arts Club and reaffirm our City Council's decision on March 5th. Please join me in voting yes on Measure B, and also City Council members, please get out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edrick. Christopher Bowen, to be followed by James Litz.
Hello again. I'm here to speak to you on Measure B as well. I'm representing the residents to preserve the Sunset Strip. And I wanted to tell you why the Norma Triangle Neighborhood Watch, the West Hollywood Heights Neighborhood Association, and the West Hollywood Chamber, amongst many other organizations, are supporting yes on Measure B. The Arts Club was actually founded by Charles Dickens in 1863, and the Arts Club in West Hollywood will replace the Hustler building and will include bistro, music, art gallery, free rehearsal space for singers, dancers, and performers. It will also include millions of dollars in community benefits. If you want to see more creativity on the Sunset Strip, please remember to vote tomorrow yes on Measure B. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Mr. James Litz, to be followed by Steve Martin.
Good evening, James Litz, City of West Hollywood. For those of you that have not voted yet, and I hope you're taking advantage of the new ballot that's very simple, thank you very much. I'm here also working on the Yes on B campaign to support the Arts Club. This was a land use decision that was properly adjudicated by staff, Planning Commission, and City Council. Ballot box planning is a bad idea. You can see a couple examples recently, high-speed rail in Ventura County with the open space proposal that has severely limited their amount of housing they can provide in Ventura County. The process was proper. Please affirm the decision of the Planning Commission, the City Council, and staff, and vote yes on Measure B. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Litz. Steve Martin, to be followed by Amanda Goodwin.
Steve Martin, West Hollywood. Thank you for the placement. This weekend, I was surprised to meet Lindsay Horvath's father when Lindsay and her dad were knocking at my door. Thank goodness I had my sign up. Anyway, I want to encourage everyone to vote tomorrow and vote no on Measure B. The Arts Club has spent $500,000 or more because this is the most dishonest measure that has been on the ballot in a long, long time. The Arts Club people are saying it's going to help affordable housing, it's going to protect tenants, even though there's not one unit of affordable housing on this project. Doesn't help anybody age in place. The city gave the Arts Club 88,000 additional square feet over what it was entitled to under the general plan, and they're giving us back a paltry 2,200 feet. They've got 10 luxury suites, they're running a boutique hotel, and they're paying 0 in transient occupancy tax. By my calculations, that's 150 to 200,000 a year that they're basically stealing from us and then giving us back as art programs. It's a bad deal for West Hollywood. And you know, I'm not speaking out in anger because I know a lot of my friends support this project. A lot of my friends up on the council have supported this project. But I am speaking out in disappointment because I really think that just because this is a deep-pocketed developer and they were able to mobilize a lot of people by only telling half the story, I think you guys have to really look out for the community and do what's best, because this is not a good bargain for West Hollywood. And I'm disappointed the way this process went down. And I'm hoping everybody will remember that and vote no tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Amanda Goodwin to be followed by Marco Colantonio.
Good evening, Amanda Goodwin, West Hollywood. I'm thinking tomorrow's going to be a new election, and probably this is going to be the same council tomorrow, after tomorrow. And, you know, we still have traffic issues, we still have homeless issues, we still have affordable housing issues growing. The city, I don't see the city really getting any better in many ways. I just see it as for every step forward, it takes 2 steps back. And I don't know what the solutions are. I've, you know, asked transportation just for one, if we could just get the green in the bike lanes so we could identify them and maybe more people will start using them feeling safer like they do in Santa Monica just did it, Beverly Hills has it. But I would love to see some changes in the city. I'd like to see some zoning changes so we don't have these big massive structures going on these parcels and maxed out variances. As far as John Duran, you know, John Duran hasn't done the right thing for a long time because, you know, John Duran has his issues. But I hold the city culpable as well. I hold the city manager and all of you because you guys have been enablers. We don't need hecklers. The thing is that 2 years ago, the citizens put him back in office. I didn't. I voted for myself. But but that's just the way it is. We're just complacent. We're creatures of habit. And if, you know, I love all of you. I do. You know, I have a relationship with all of you, and I think you guys are amazing. But I don't know how we're going to change as a city and really kind of get back to our essence and our roots if you guys don't really start taking a stand as a collective body. And, you know, John, I respect John, but it's really time for John to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Marco Colantonio to be followed by Keith Kaplan.
Marco Colantonio, longtime resident, the City of West Hollywood. Good evening, council members, Mayor Pro Tem, our city manager, and city attorney. Just some thoughts to consider when you vote tomorrow, if you haven't voted tomorrow. Whether an elected official or an activist to call to public service requires certain responsibilities. One of the greatest of those responsibilities is to be a role model, an example for all, but especially future generations to aspire to. It's not enough to revel in your accomplishments, but if you hope to inspire, then you must be respected, and that means leading by example. Equality means we respect those who disagree, their opinions, feelings, and beliefs. Thus, an accuser should never be perceived as an opportunist, and a public servant who portrays themselves as a purveyor of dirty jokes, bawdy humor, and a flirt should understand that they will be perceived as a predator. With that, I'm pleased that John Duran has stepped down as mayor. At the end of the day, if we've made a positive difference in the world around us, we hope that others will pick up where we've left off, and if so, hope we've inspired and thus been role models. I'm honored to stand before each of the 4 members of our city council seated before us today, and to say that you have lived up to your responsibilities as role models with service, integrity, and compassion. That is why I'm voting for the incumbents, John D'Amico, Lauren Meister, and Lindsay Horvath in tomorrow's election. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Colantonio. Keith Kaplan to be followed by Jerome Kitchen.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Keith Kaplan. I'm a long-term resident of West Hollywood, and I'm here tonight to, number one, urge the residents of West Hollywood to please remember to go vote tomorrow. You do have a voice, and it does matter. And when you go vote, I'd like to make sure you vote yes on Measure B in support of the Arts Club. You know, we're a small 1.9 square mile town without a lot of land, and we won't often have the opportunity to welcome an iconic cultural institution to West Hollywood. This is one of those rare opportunities. The Arts Club, started in the 1800s by Charles Dickens, has had some of the most notable members from arts, literature, music, architecture, and design. And they are offering such an incredible opportunity for West Hollywood to land on the cultural map of Los Angeles. In addition, they're providing public spaces for community use. They're providing ground-level activation for Sunset. By all accounts, a gem of an architectural building that will add to the Sunset scape. And in repudiation of what Steve Martin said, because they came to my door and they lied and they said this when they sought my signature on their petition, this does not impact affordable housing in a negative way. And it does not, as they told my senior citizen neighbor Irv, mean that he may lose his housing if projects like this are built. Truth matters. We have an opportunity for a very important cultural institution. Please don't let it slip away. Vote yes on Measure B.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Jerome Kitchen, to be followed by Rosalind Jones.
Good evening. I'm standing here today not really to speak to the council, because the council has proven theirself to the voters and to the community time and time again. I just want to speak to the community and the voters in the room, and I want to tell you, while you're thinking about voting yes on measures, think about voting yes on your community and voting yes on safety for everybody. There is some questions that I have for Lauren and that I have for John. Have you guys both, and please answer yes or no because I have 2 minutes, have you guys both returned your donations from Ed Buck to Ed Buck or to the Justice for Jamil campaign?
Mr. Kitchen, it's not how this works. I'm happy
no,
to.
they have not.
Excuse me.
And by
Mr.
John Durant passing the mantle over to John, that's just simply pacifying us and playing in our face. Because John Domingo, however you want to pronounce his name tonight, owes his whole political career to Ed Buck and should have been stepped up boldly against Ed Buck, against John Durant, for John Durant's actions against this city. You cannot believe that this new mayor has your best interests at heart. So when you go to the voting election polls tomorrow, think about what's really going on in your city. This council has made it safe for John Duran to pray in your city. This council has taken your tax dollars and paid for John Duran to sexually harass young men at your dollar. And they have sat around and pacified it. The city attorney finally, after you guys paid $500,000, gave you actions. Have any of you guys set in motion any of those actions to take place? No, because you wish your buddy well. Your buddy that faked the heart attack, faked the illness, well, because you guys do not want to hold him accountable. Lindsay has been the only person on this council that has spoken up. And Lindsay should be the only person on this council that's up for re-election that you vote for.
Thank you,
John
Mr.
Duran
Kitchen.
should not feel comfortable in West Hollywood, and the people that
Thank you,
make
sir.
him complicit to his actions should not feel
Thank you,
safe
sir.
in West Hollywood as well. Your mayor does not obey laws. Why should I obey your rules in this chamber?
Thank you, sir.
You guys should make black people, brown people, white people, everybody feel safe. And none of us no longer trust your judgment. Now you have a sheriff that can't even arrest a predator or a serial killer here for me,
Sir,
but you
that
cannot
is
use
enough.
that same voice to
Mr.
speak up
Kitchen.
against serial murder.
This is a community council meeting. You have had 2 minutes to speak. I'm not going to turn off your mic. Sir, I understand your frustration. I hear you, sir. We understand your frustration. Rosalind Jones, to be followed by Larry Block.
Good evening, council members. My name is Rosalind Jones, and I'm here representing the Me Too Survivor March movement.
And I'm here to talk about John Duran as well and the endemic nature of sexual violence, especially in this community. My message to John Duran is that stepping down from mayor is not enough. You owe this community much more than what you have given them. And the hurt that you have caused, the violence you have brought into what should be a safe space for the LGBT community, your inaction in the response to the deaths of Timothy Dean and Jamel Moore all indicate gross abuse of power, manipulation, and privilege. The community of LGBTQ survivors deserves better than what you have given. As a survivor myself and a proud member of the LGBTQ community, it makes me sick to my stomach to know that this city would excuse John Duran's manipulation of his queer identity to explain away his inappropriate and predatory behavior. To interim Mayor D'Amico, the eyes of the LGBTQ community and the community of sexual assault survivors now fall on you. It's been almost 2 years, and Ed Buck has not faced any kind of accountability for the death of Jamel Moore. Since the death of Timothy Dean, Ed Buck has not even been arrested and has been seen out in public with young black men. If it's not in your job description, are you simply going to sweep the deaths of Timothy and Jamel under the rug? Or will you fulfill your duty to the residents of West Hollywood to make this city safe? To quote from your own website, it says that you will work to ensure that, quote, our neighborhood keeps its promise to be a safe place to live, work, and play, and that our community supports people in their individuality. So tell me, does that extend to the black queer residents of this city or just the white men with power? Finally, to anyone who says, leave John Duran alone, I ask you to look into my face, the face of a sexual violence survivor, and tell me that my trauma doesn't matter, because that is the message you send when you do so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Larry Block is our last speaker.
Well, Larry Block, West Hollywood. Aren't we all glad that tomorrow the election is over? I could take all the signs down off the windows. And the first thing is really to congratulate the challengers, because it takes a lot to stand up and run for office, and there's a lot of anger in this election. Things have gotten sidetracked. I think everybody can go out and vote with confidence for John D'Amico, Lauren Meister, and Lindsay Horvath. They are the change that we hope for. When we started with the promise of term limits, it was so that we would start new and change the guard here. Lauren has 4 years. Lindsay has 4 years. John D'Amico has 8 years. Together, it's 16 years. There's 35 years right over there, 17 years over there. The change that you want is coming, but term limits takes a few years to kick in, and maybe John Hammond will be right, and maybe elections will serve the term limit cause. But John D'Amico is not John Duran. John D'Amico was the one who stood up here and pointed out putting his city first. He put the city first against his friendship, and he talked to be able to say whatever he had to say, and he put the city first. I've seen him put the city first. There was no dog park until one day we walked through. That's bullshit, okay? Everybody is an equal opportunity person up there.
Try
okay?
to
We are not the police.
keep your language PG, if you
Oh,
would.
I'm sorry. I don't know it's me or him. I'm getting carried away.
Thank you.
So anyway, I've seen John D'Amico stand up for this community over and over and over again, putting the city before anybody else. And when I get an email asking me which one, John D, is the John D that is the good one, there's confusion out there for people who don't know. John D'Amico has served this community very well. I'm very proud of Lauren and Lindsay and their last
Mr.
4
Block.
years.
Thank you very much. Before we go to council member comments, I'm wondering if, oh, there's 2 more. Oh, they popped in there. They weren't there before, were they? No. Okay. Michael Gurley to be followed by Dennis Gleason. Sorry, Mr. Gurley, I didn't see your name.
That's okay, I put 5C on it. And anyway, honorable council members, my name is Mike Gurley, a 27-year resident until moving to Los Angeles a year ago, and I've been in West Hollywood staff member for 22 years. Tonight I was planning to speak to the mayor face-to-face, so instead I'll address him through the cameras. Mayor, as International Mr. Leather 2007, I'm here to tell you that your participation in any sexual scene is not welcome unless you are invited. You do not seem to get that. So instead of waiting for a no to stop, you need to wait for a yes before you start. You have suggested in the media that your council colleagues should not hold you accountable for actions that did not occur on City Hall or at city events. So let's focus on events that did occur at City Hall and at city events under your leadership as mayor. As I stated in my sworn deposition in the Owens lawsuit, on city time at City Hall with the city manager at the same table, you showed me pictures of guys on Grindr. In front of city staff, you commented on my new fiance saying, "Oh, that makes sense. X is the bottom and X is the top." Who likes being anally penetrated and who enjoys anally penetrating others is not your story to tell. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? Under your leadership as mayor, documented by the Los Angeles Times and WehoVille, the city paid you to fly to DC for a conference where you, as a West Hollywood mayor, hit on a staff member of another council member. Even after you understood his subordinate position and received his classy brush off, you solicited oral sex. Mayor Duran, people are allowed to be both sexually active and receive respect simultaneously. Under your leadership as mayor, city staff have not contacted me regarding the Ian sworn statements. Why not? Under your leadership as mayor, you have disrespected the lives of Jamel Moore and Timothy Dean by defending them and to this day remaining Facebook friends with Ed Buck. Two final things: stay away from my boyfriend and my family, and to quote your dear friend Ed Buck, it's time to flush the John.
Thank you, Mr. Gurley. Dennis Gleason, I believe, is our final speaker. Do I have that right this time? Thank you, Mr. Gleason.
Good evening, honorable members. My name is Dennis Gleason. I'm a resident of Hollywood in the city of Los Angeles. As you consider various actions directed toward Mayor John Duran, I would like to provide you, once again, firsthand testimony about his behavior while on a taxpayer-funded trip to Washington, D.C. 1 year ago, while attending the National League of Cities conference in D.C., I was contacted on an app by a man I quickly learned to be Mayor John Duran. I told Mayor Duran that I was a staffer for Los Angeles City Councilman Joe Buscaino, that my boyfriend was a West Hollywood city employee, and that any sexual interaction would be, as I politely put it, quote, too close to home. While I thought this would be the end of the conversation, he continued to make sexual comments and explicitly requested oral sex 2 more times after I declined. And I want to make this point, that is where he crossed the line. I have no problem that he's on Grindr. I think that's great. I have no problem or shame about being on Grindr myself. The point at which he crossed the line is when I told him no and he solicited oral sex 2 more times. I am telling you guys, this happened last year at the National League of Cities conference. As we all know, Mayor Duran is a criminal defense attorney by profession and has been doing his best to obfuscate the real issues at hand and to make himself look like the victim. While he cries foul about being deprived of due process, I would like to remind the council that the 5th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution provide for due process before being deprived of life, liberty, or property. The actions to rebuke Mayor Duran in item 5C can be adopted by a council majority, and the only due process that is required is providing 72 hours notice to the public that it will be discussed at a council meeting. That threshold has been met. Furthermore, the National League of Cities conference is next week. Is Mayor Duran attending on behalf of the city? If so, then the items in 5C are even more pertinent today and should be acted on tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason. Before we go to councilmember comments, I wondered if Lieutenant Mulder could come up and discuss and tell us if there have been any developments in the case regarding Mr. Buck.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members and members of the audience. My name is Bill Mulder. I'm the acting captain at West Hollywood Sheriff Station, and Since our last council meeting, there haven't been any new updates. We are still, today I actually was in conversation with the supervising lieutenant from our homicide bureau about this case, inquiring if there was any updated information. We're still waiting for the toxicology report to return from the coroner's office, and they are still making coordination for certain interviews regarding this case. But besides that, that's the only update that I have.
It's my understanding, I learned from a member of our community who serves on a body at the request of District Attorney Jackie Lacey, that she she held a press conference of some sort earlier today requesting that anyone with information regarding the case, either case, come forward and share that information. It was my understanding that from previous comments you've made, and we've heard from the Sheriff's Department, that people have come forward to testify. So are there people coming forward? Do you need more people? Can you help me understand what it is you need in terms of evidence?
Yeah, there are
that request
people
earlier today.
I'm sorry. Yeah, there are indeed people that have come forward, and I know that our Homicide Bureau is currently coordinating those interviews to make those interviews happen. I did not see the press conference earlier with the district attorney, but certainly if anybody has any information pertaining to either of these cases for Jamel Moore or for Timothy Dean, that they should come forward to either our Homicide Bureau or to the DA's office, either way, and we will absolutely, our detectives will certainly be happy to interview them and talk to them about the case.
And the people that the Sheriff's Department is interviewing, that information is being shared with the District Attorney's office?
Generally, when we do the interviews, we record the interviews, and we also do a investigative report about the interviews. And once the case is presented to the district attorney's office, they'll have all that information at the time. Right now, I don't know if they have their. I believe they are currently coordinating with them. But again, I'm not conducting the investigation in the case. But there, at one point, certainly will be the pass on of that information to the DA's office.
Thank you. I know we've asked you this in the past, but both of the cases are being reviewed right now. Is that correct?
If I could add also,
Yes,
last week we did have administrative meetings with the LA County Sheriff's Department. Kristen Cook and I had time to meet personally with the sheriff. We originally were going to meet on some administrative matters, but we did spend time on the two cases. His commitment to the city and to the community is that both cases will be fully investigated. They're reopening the Jamal Moore case as well, and looking at it with fresh eyes and a whole new investigation. So yes, both of them are treated as active investigations.
And I guess the question I wanted to be sure was asked again, and I think we've asked it every time we've been here, is there anything else we as a council or individual council members can do to bring additional light or to move this along? So maybe, Paul, you had some conversation in which there was something else we could do, or Lieutenant Mulder, you know of something, but it's been our information that this is fully in the hands of the detectives downtown and the Sheriff's Department generally.
Yeah, that's correct. With our Homicide Bureau, they're obviously investigating this case. And in terms of to your question, what the City Council can do, I think you have done by making sure we're keeping this case out in the open and inviting people to come if they have any information to contact us or the DA or whoever they're comfortable contacting to coordinate and to communicate with our homicide detectives to give them that information. So yeah, that's important that we keep on encouraging people to come forward if they have information.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? No, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to council member comments. Who would like to begin? Councilmember Heilman?
Sure. First of all, I wanted to thank everyone who came out to speak tonight, and I especially want to thank the people who came out to speak about social services funding. That is on the consent calendar. It has not been removed, so that is going to be approved as part of our consent calendar, and we're glad that we're able to reprogram those funds in a productive way. Secondly, I know you heard it from all of the speakers, but tomorrow is Election Day, and I want to encourage everyone to get out and vote. If you do have any issues with voting, or if you need transportation to the polls, you can call City Hall. Our city clerk's office is available all day long tomorrow to make sure you get to the right polling location. And if you have any questions, you can call the city clerk. I want to wish good luck to all of the candidates, and especially to my colleagues here tonight in tomorrow's election. One of the speakers spoke about painting, I think it was Amanda, painting the bike lanes green to match the green that is in Beverly Hills and several other cities. That's a great idea, and I hope that that can be implemented. And I'd like to ask the city manager to come back to us with some recommendations on how to get that implemented. And finally, obviously, a lot of people spoke about Mayor Duran. We are going to be taking up that item later in the agenda, so I'll reserve my remarks for when we get to that in the agenda.
Thank you, Councilmember Heilman. Councilmember Horvath?
Thank you. I too want to thank all the representatives of the service providers who came out to speak tonight. That is who we are as a community. I thank them for their service, and I thank our staff for working with them to make sure these services are provided to our community. Item 2G on our agenda tonight, while I do have additional thoughts about what's presented before us tonight, and I know we've received comment from members of the public. I understand that this is simply posted for advance notice so everyone knows what's coming forward at a future public hearing, so I'll reserve my comments for that public hearing. But I just wanted to acknowledge that we have received comment on this item, and those comments will be heard and considered as part of the public hearing that's forthcoming. Since the last meeting, I participated in the Liability Trust Fund Oversight Committee and Claims Board. I represented the city on the Clean Power Alliance Executive Committee meeting. I want to thank all of our staff members who hosted a wonderful Soul Cafe Black History Month event. It was a wonderful event, a great way for the City Hall community to come together and celebrate culture in an important way. And I want to thank all of the members of, especially of our City Hall staff group who came together to host the event. Thank you very much. This past Sunday, the Russian Advisory Board helped us celebrate International Women's Day, which is coming up this Friday. There are more events to take place on Friday. As a former Women's Advisory Board member, I know that the month of March is chock full of all kinds of events for women. I hope that the community will engage and participate in those events, because it is, in fact, Women's History Month. And Women's History Month was officially passed as a congressional resolution in March of 1987, which happens to be when my brother was born. But it's a month that we take to acknowledge and celebrate the accomplishments of American women, although Women's History Month is certainly celebrated in countries throughout the world. That's when it became official in the United States. And as I mentioned, we will be celebrating Women's History Month with a variety of events and actions and opportunities for community engagement, and I hope that the city will get involved. And as I mentioned, I heard from a member of the community that Jackie Lacey was hosting this press conference earlier today. I'm not aware exactly of the details of what happened, although she did call me as I was walking into closed session. I've yet to speak with her directly, but the conversations are happening, and I think that to echo the message that I did hear from that event, if anyone has information, please do come forward. They are seeking any and all information to be known as a part of the record for these cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Horvath. Councilmember Meister?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. First, I want to respond to Mr. Kitchen's question. No, I didn't return money to Mr. Buck from the 2015 campaign, but I will tell you that I did give $150 to Timothy Dean's Celebration of Life GoFundMe, $200 to the Southern Poverty Law Center, and $150 to Step Up. Regarding our consent calendar, item 2E, I want to note my no vote. That's on the ordinance amending temporary cannabis uses. On item 2G, the ZTA, which is a receive and file, I do want to mention that I too received comments, and I will say that the residents are not very happy with this item and do not feel like they've been heard. So I would suggest to staff that they maybe reach out before our public hearing again to make sure that the residents are heard. And also wanted to thank the Unity and Diversity Arts Foundation, who provided the programming for the International Women's Day event, and it was a very successful program. We have a lot of talented people in West Hollywood.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Meister. I wanted to start with item 2I, which is about the social service funding process. And I wrote to David Juni and John Leonard earlier today mentioning that I was going to ask my colleagues if we could include in the public hearing on funding priorities and the priorities discussion a presentation on historic funding levels compared to the city budget over the last 20 years to see if our human services funding has matched the increase in our city budget. Without objection, we can include that in that effort. I also wanted to respond to Mr. Kitchen. First of all, I apologize. I'm trying to get this council back to regular business. That doesn't mean that any of us are insensitive to how sick with sadness we are about the fact that 2 men died in our city of drug overdoses, and that among the, sadly, many others. It's a terrible thing that is happening, and Mr. Dean and Mr. Moore and the circumstances, we hope, are being investigated with all deliberate speed, and it's not explainable to me what's happened so far, but I trust that our Sheriff's Department is doing what they need to do. I also wanted to respond to whether or not I've returned my donations, which were from 2011, $500 to my campaign account, and 2014 to my campaign account. My husband and I, since 2011, have given nearly $100,000 in donations to local charities at about $10,000 to $12,000 a year. It's something we believe in. It's something we have done and will continue to do. But I certainly would not send money to a known drug user because he sent it to me. And those dollars have gone to worthy organizations helping people in this community, people with HIV, people who can't afford food, people who want to learn to swim, people who learn to code, young girls who want to learn about science, trans women who want to make art. There's an extraordinary set of things that money has gone to, and it will not ever be returned to a known drug user. So I also want to say that our city clerk mentioned that Mr. Duran has given up his seat as the mayor. We have on our agenda an item 5B, which I think we will get to fairly quickly, given the items in front of us, in which, 5C, excuse me, in which we will choose a new mayor and a new mayor pro tem, and so I will reserve my comments for then about that matter. If there's no other council member comments, we'll get the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'll be brief. I have 3 items to report. From Public Works, the fountain crosswalks, including the flashing ped lights, are being installed tomorrow at Hayworth, Harper, Havenhurst, Formosa, and Detroit. So that's a big step in making that street safer for pedestrians. Long-range planning, they're holding some workshops called Let's Talk Sunset to discuss the Sunset pilot projects. I know there's been a lot of opinions on those. So on Thursday, March 14th at 6:30 at the London Hotel, will be an opportunity for folks to share their thoughts. As mentioned earlier and repeatedly tonight, tomorrow is Election Day. I want to remind everyone, and it's somewhat bittersweet, even though this is a city election and it's one of about 10 cities that are having elections tomorrow, the ballots will be counted by the LA County Registrar Recorder. So traditionally, here at the council chamber, we would have kind of an open house and we would get live updates. Tomorrow, no one will be here at the council chamber. We will be monitoring the ballots from the county. Polling locations, as everyone knows, are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. After that, we will start getting information from the county. We'll post it on our website. If people want more up-to-date information, they can go to www.lavote.net/election results, and you could get up-to-date results on the election. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. We'll need a motion to, well, first we'll need the fiscal impact on the consent calendar.
The fiscal impact for tonight with the removal of item 2.0 and the revision to item, 2.0 and the revision to item 2L is $1,101,553 in expenditures, $0 in potential revenue, and $5,381 in waived fees.
Thank you. Would like to mark our votes. The motion passes. All right. Shall we move to item 3A, which is an amendment to the city's master fee resolution by adding a new shared mobility device storage fee to the schedule of fees and charges for the Code Compliance Division. This is Oscar Delgado. Oh, hey, Dan. This would be Dan Mick, Code Compliance Supervisor. I'm going to say that this hearing was posted as required, and the city clerk is going to agree.
Yes,
if that's
as
the
required
case.
by law, yes.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Mick. I'm the Code Compliance Supervisor with the City of West Hollywood. The item before you tonight is a fee resolution adopting a new daily storage fee for on-demand mobility devices that have been impounded, scooters. On February 4th, 2019, the City Council heard and adopted an ordinance related to the impound, storage, and disposal of shared mobility devices. This item is the fee that was promised as part of that item. If the item is adopted, the storage fees will accrue on a daily basis at a rate of $10 per day per device until the device has been retrieved by the owner or the $300 maximum has been reached, whichever comes first. I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions?
Yes. I spoke with a representative from one of the scooter companies in advance of this item being posted, but they did raise the issue to me that if the city imposes fees that are higher than the cost of their mobility devices, that they probably are just going to let them live with the city. So how have we evaluated the cost of these fines, and what expectation do we have that these mobility companies are going to actually collect what they're littering on our streets?
Honestly, I'm not sure if we can actually expect them to collect them. Even when you're getting the initial fine of just $250, they're still not collecting them. And we've heard they can cost, each scooter costs up to upwards of $500 per scooter. They just don't seem to be willing to come and collect them voluntarily. They just don't. I don't know how we get around that, but the item that was heard on February 4th allows the city manager to direct on how we dispose of them, be it at auction, sell them for parts. I am really not sure what the other options are. And once they're disposed of, the companies will still be on the hook, or will still be responsible for the fees that have been collecting since the item was impounded.
Okay, so even if they don't collect the device, they're still responsible to pay the fines?
Yes.
I'm prepared to move to close the public hearing and adopt the resolution before us tonight.
All right. Public hearing is closed. The resolution, all those mark your vote. This seemed to pass 4-0. Thank you very much. Item 5A, Residents Task Force on Metro Rail. This was from Councilmember Meister and myself. Councilmember Meister, did you wish to?
I can just read the statement on the subject for the public. The City Council will consider authorizing the establishment of a residents' task force on Metro Rail. The purpose of the residents' task force is to elicit opinions and gather feedback from West Hollywood residents on the planned light rail extension through West Hollywood, including but not limited to potential alignments, type of rail, environmental impacts, estimated costs, timing, and financing.
All right. Does anyone have any questions? There's no speakers.
And just the logistics would be that we would each pick 3 residents to be on the task force, one from East Side, one from Center City, one from the West Side, for each of us to get a good representation. I know that Councilmember Horvath and Councilmember Heilman are on a subcommittee, but this would be separate from that, and it's separate from WHAM because WHAM is obviously an advocacy group, whereas this would be a residents' task force that would discuss these issues, and some are going to be, you know, positive, some not, and we'll get to hear the whole range of opinions.
All right. Any speakers? All right. Make a motion and seconded to move the item.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Councilmember Heilman.
Mayor Pro Tem, I
Yes.
just have a procedural question on whether or not the task force would be a Brown Act body, that we'd be posting agendas and minutes and that sort of thing, or is it just a community-type task force for a specific amount of time and they'll disband after a while, or are you looking to keep them forever?
Yeah.
The latter.
The second from me as well, that it would be time limited. We just probably want to have some recommendation back to us about how long it might take to cover the items and other ones, and then have a summary, write a report, and then have it available for Metro and for the council.
Right.
Okay.
We see this as complementing what Metro will be doing, their outreach.
Okay.
Please.
I guess I'm concerned about the potential for overlap with WHAM and the possibility that this would be supplanting our existing transportation commission's input and review. So I'm not necessarily opposed to finding ways to engage more of the community, but I'm not ready to support this tonight because I need to understand how this will work with our existing bodies, and I'm not sure I understand that with this agenda item tonight.
Councilmember Horvath?
Thank you. I agree. I think that we have the Transportation Commission, we have WHAM, we have All on Board Coalition, we have individual meetings with our staff and with this council subcommittee, which are not public, but they are a voice for the city as well. But there are public meetings, including the West Side City's COG meetings, which are publicly noticed, Metro meetings, which will be publicly noticed. And I agree that making sure that we have as much community input as possible is the goal. And that's why we have publicly noticed meetings and welcome public comment at every opportunity. And perhaps as we move forward with the process, you know, establishing a task force to help determine certain aspects of how the decision-making will go might be helpful. But at this point, I think we have a lot already in place. And I agree that it's not clear to me how this task force works with what already exists.
Well, I would I would just add that I think the difference between the organizations we're paying to collect support and the county metro effort, which I was on a call with them last week, and they don't have any idea what they're doing, or didn't present a face that they seem to really understand this community and the way they might engage with us. And I'm just concerned, based on the face they presented in that meeting, that they're going to come here and then they're going to rubber stamp their own idea. And I think everyone wants Metro to come to West Hollywood. But if we're committing $500 million potentially of city money now for the next 100 years, I think a task force that is made up of residents, and I think Councilmember Heilman mentioned something quite important, which is that our Transportation Commission could lead this, and perhaps it needs to be led by them. But I just don't have a good sense that there is an actual way that happens in our city during what is typically our city's meeting time, which is at night around 6:30, in which we would gather information about routes and timing and financing and cost and impact. So that's why I think, for me and Councilmember Meister, we wanted to expand this to have a residents task force, because on the other side of this decision, I think we need to be able to say with confidence that our residents participated, and having a residents task force is a fairly clear way of doing that. Saying that Metro came to town at 10:30 on a Thursday morning to Plummer Park, I'm not so sure that that's really a way to say that residents participated, or asking residents to go to a COG meeting that's in Santa Monica during the day is really a way to get residents to commit that they're meeting. And so I think, Councilmember Heilman, I think, maybe this just does need to be an arm of our Transportation Commission, and perhaps that's an oversight of Lauren and I, but it's up to $500 million. That's probably more money than we have spent as a city since we were founded, or pretty close. So I just want to make sure we're doing the right thing. Mr. Martin is asked to speak.
You guys have all, Steve Martin, West Hollywood, you guys have all said some great things. They're very balanced. Maybe I could suggest, as a way to get people really plugged in, is if you would do a joint study session, a well-publicized joint study session as to the status and where we're at with the Transportation Commission, and help get everybody focused. Because I think Acting Mayor D'Amico is right. We need something to help focus people and get a lot of views in, and maybe that would do it. It's just a suggestion. I know you're all coming from a good place, so that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. So we have a motion to adopt in a second, but I have the sense that this is not going to pass. So I guess if there's someone who wants to amend it in some way, I could withdraw my second, and maybe you could amend it and second it.
Well, maybe, here's what I would suggest, that maybe we come back after consulting with staff and our consultants with different ways that we can engage the community. I appreciate the effort to try to get more of our residents engaged in this process. And perhaps the way to do it is through our existing Transportation Commission, but maybe we could ask our city manager and our transportation staff to come back to us within a month with some recommendations.
Yeah.
How's that? Is that all right? Okay.
I also want to make sure that our business community is included, because I think a big part of what's motivating bringing rail to West Hollywood is the jobs that would be served in the region, and so making sure that the business, I think that a residents task force potentially misses that opportunity. So I just want to make sure they're included in the conversation as well.
Well, actually, the point was that this is a residents task force because it's the residents that, when they vote on an item like the Metro, Measure M, they're the ones footing the bill when it comes to paying the taxes. And so the idea was that we have a residents task force because the businesses will be able to get involved in other aspects of this, but this was really targeted to be a residents task force so that the residents can tell us what they think about alignments and type of rail and the cost and the financing. These are things that are very different from what they passed when they passed Measure M, and I think it's important that we hear from our residents on that.
Yeah, I would just say that I think there are maybe not an infinite number more, but there are a lot more opportunities for businesses to be represented. And in this case, I think some of the perhaps unintended consequences of moving forward with this is that then the residents are asked to allow for more development or allow for more impact, and I just think that, you know, we should bring them along so that when the final sets of decisions are made, we're all having the same discussion. So I appreciate that we want the businesses to be involved, and perhaps there could be something led by the chamber to engage businesses and to get their point of view. But we are the representatives of the residents as well as the businesses, and so I just go back to the sort of $500 million question, and I just want to be sure that our residents know what they're buying and want to buy it and then want to live with it once they've purchased it. So I guess with that said...
I'm not disputing
yeah,
that.
Yeah, no,
I just
no,
want
I
to
get
make
it.
sure we're
Yeah.
having a cohesive conversation.
Yeah,
That's
and
it.
yeah. So I think, is that direction enough, Mr. City Manager? Or do we need to pass a motion, or you'll just bring it back in a month? Okay, all right. With that item, we'll move on to item 5B, which is neighborhood-friendly multifamily development policies and standards, R2, R3, R4 zoning districts. Councilmember Meister brought this forward. Would you like to read the statement or say a few things?
Sure. Okay, so this is for council to consider directing staff to identify opportunities and develop design criteria and land use options that will advance the neighborhood-friendly planning policies described in the report with the intent of addressing community concerns about neighborhood livability and out-of-scale residential development and reducing impacts of new residential projects on adjacent properties and neighborhoods by balancing the latest building requirements and construction practices with a more tailored local policy. Resulting impacts can be minimized and new developments can better enhance neighborhood livability and maintain the integrity of cities' existing residential zones. The impetus for this was I went through the survey that the city had completed on the R2, R3, R4, and felt that what we had seen in the past really didn't connect the dots from the survey and the response that we got to the survey to how we move forward. And I don't think that we've done enough to move forward. So this item hopefully puts us in a better understanding of why we need to be doing what we, in terms of neighborhood-friendly policies, to be doing more, and also directing this to the new urban design and architecture studio, which I think when we first started talking about R2, R3, R4, we didn't have that position or that department, and so I think we have to look at this differently now that we will have that department.
Okay, we have a couple, 5 or 6 speakers. Why don't we go to them unless there are any questions about this before that? Okay, Susan Lagudis to be followed by Amanda Goodwin.
Susana Lagudis. I'm a 33-year resident of West Hollywood. And although I was not contacted for this community survey, I don't know, I never get contacted for these things. I felt very vindicated to read this line in the staff report, which gives context to our community's opposition to some of the new multi-unit housing in our neighborhoods. Before crying NIMBY, it is important to note that most residents were in favor of more affordable housing. However, survey respondents clearly noted that multi-unit family housing does not equal affordable housing, and this observation rings true for many, and I'd say most, of the new multi-unit developments being built in the city. I'd like to thank Councilmember Meister for her continued championing and support of our community for those of us who call WeHo home. And I'd like to urge you to join her and support this effort. I really hope that staff follows through on this, and I'm in total support of 5B. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lagudis. Amanda Goodwin to be followed by Stephanie Harker.
Good evening. Amanda Goodwin, West Hollywood. I don't think this comes to any surprise because an email went out this afternoon. As a resident of Tri-Rest, we're just getting crushed. I think these R2, R3, R4, when the city made these zoning codes, the city was a much different density. It was a smaller city and it needed the growth. And now we're just getting slammed. And there doesn't seem to be any power for anybody to say no to any developments that really don't make any sense, but by right laws or whatever, like what's happening on Westmount Drive, that a guy can come in and build 5 units on an old duplex plot, max out his variances, and pay the city to not have to provide affordable housing, to me is egregious. I always say this, we're responsible landlords that try to create livable units where people can come and live there, and we don't gouge people, but somebody coming in and building something and spending a couple $1 million is going to have to get $8,000, $9,000 a month rent, which is just ridiculous. And we can tone this down by changing the zoning laws. Instead of allowing 5 units, then there's only, in R2, there's only 4 units allowed. I mean, I don't see this as a bad thing. We need to slow things down in some areas. You know, I believe in development. I think it's great for the city. I believe in walkability. But you can't crush us in certain areas. We're impacted on all sides now, and it's done. And I don't want to see it happen all over this city. And I'd love to see affordable housing, and I'd love to see the possibility of micro units being talked about. You know, a lot of people are against them, but at least it would allow more affordable housing in this city, and, you know, finding the right parcels for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Stephanie Harker to be followed by Steve Martin, and then Kathy Blavis, our last speaker.
Good evening. Stephanie Harker, City of West Hollywood. Thank you for bringing this item forward, Councilmember Meister. And I underlined one thing in the item, that was flexible options for neighborhood scaled massing, taking into consideration 3-dimensional relationships, modulation, character, and interest. And I really think that's what many of us who struggle with the building the amount of building and the size of the buildings going up, is that we really are lacking character. It's like, you know, we go to the design review meetings, and it gets down to a discussion of what colors they like and things. It's like, no, that's not what this should all be about. I'm hoping that sometime in the future, when we, as a city and a community, go back and look at our code, that we can look into form-based code, which looks at not just one project. And I feel like that's what happens right now. It's like one project and the rest of the neighborhood or the block or the area is ignored. And they slap up, you know, luxury condos. There's new luxury condos going up next to the McDonald's parking lot. Maybe we have to redefine luxury. You know, we all want what's best for this city and the community that's here now. We're so dense now. We have 18,000 people per square mile, which is, triple what Los Angeles has. And as far as the micro units being affordable, they're not. 300 square feet in this town right now, rents for $1,500, which means you need a $60,000. But anyway, thank you for looking at this again, and I hope that we can move forward with more responsible development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harker. Steve Martin and Kathy Blavis.
Steve Martin, West Hollywood. Lauren, I want to thank you for bringing this forward. It talks about livability in the community. I know that's been an issue we count on you for. We really need to focus on a lot of new technologies to make sure that we're creating more water permeable spaces to stop urban runoff. It needs to be more tree friendly. There's got to be places for trees to actually be able to grow. We've got to worry about reflective heat. Now, a lot of that can be taken care of by a good green policy with trees, but some of it can be done by design. And we need to look at all of these things, particularly for some of the larger, more commercial buildings. There's just things that we need to look at as keeping the urban landscape in a human scale. I mean, you haven't been to Beijing or Shanghai. I mean, it's a trip, but I'm not sure I'd want to live there. There's many, many things we can do, and I think this is a great step in the right direction. One of the things that we need to look at, and I was appreciating John D'Amico's commentary in WehoVille that was just posted the other day, and I'm not sure if the statistics are right about the city only having a net of 174 people move in the last 10 years, whether we've changed our population, because we've certainly had a lot of development. But even if that number is remotely close, we need to look at how many units are vacant, how many units have been pulled off the market, and how many rent-controlled units have been demolished and been replaced by an equal or slightly larger number of luxury units, because that's where we're really getting beat up. And these policies, I know this is all general plan stuff, but we really need to look at how this development impacts the people who've lived here and want to stay here. Thank you so much.
Kathy Blavis is our last speaker.
Good evening, Kathy Blavis, City of West Hollywood. I too want to thank Councilmember Meister for bringing this forward. I'm really excited about this. I hope it gets support of council. I really also appreciated the staff report. I think the consultants and the survey really hit the nail on the head with listening to what community is saying. And I think, you know, I too have nothing against development. I'm for affordable housing, but I think we've lost our way. And I think we did not take this into account going into it. It was just build, 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 more, we need. And to me, this is the single most important aspect of development in our city right now. This can and will dictate the future for what's left of our quote-unquote urban village, giving respect to those people who don't live here yet, and especially to those who actually, do live here and want to age in place. We really do have to take our community and our neighborhoods into account. There's any number of places that we've lost that too. There's a lot of hope for what's coming down the pike. So again, I'm very excited about this. I agree with Stephanie Harker with regard to form-based code. That was, the lecture that was last year that Stefanos Palazoides spoke about, and other people whose names I can't remember, really put into perspective. We need a drone's eye view of our city to see what can be and taking the neighborhoods into account. So again, thank you. I hope you support this, and I wish everybody good luck tomorrow, voting day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blavis. Would you please read the citizen position slips?
Yes, the following people wanted to express their support for the recommended item: Matt Dubin, Carlos de Meneses, and the following person wanted to express their opposition to the recommended item: Michael Dolan.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Horvath?
Thank you. I too want to thank Councilmember Meister for bringing this forward. I think that this is a conversation that is an important one to have in the community. I believe it sort of evaporated from the work plan somehow, and I think that there was an expectation not only by members of the council but people in the community that we were going to have some sort of broader conversation about R2 to R4, and it disappeared. So I'm glad to see it resurrected. I think I have some questions about some of the specifics, but I do believe that returning this to the urban design and architecture studio to allow their professional expertise to inform what those specifics are, to come back and take a look at, as was said in some of the public comment, what some of the neighborhoods are that need special attention versus, sort of one-size-fits-all thinking. I think that's exactly what this design studio was intended for, something we worked on bringing forward together, so I'm not surprised to see you bring this forward. And I think that hopefully we will get to the place where we expected to get the first time around by actually having the conversation and making the changes that we think are necessary.
Thank you. Councilmember Heilman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing this forward. I'm opposed to this. I'm opposed primarily because we've already given our community development staff direction to develop design guidelines for the R4 and the R2 and R3 zones, and we haven't given them an opportunity to finish those design guidelines, and now we're sort of trying to micromanage what that process is going to be. So I would prefer that we allow the staff to complete the work plan that we've already given them with respect to design. I agree that there are some things that are built in the community that I don't appreciate the design. I don't necessarily think they fit in with the current existing urban development that we have, but I don't think this is the solution. I think we need to trust our staff to come forward with the response to the direction we've already given. Secondly, there are a few things that in the staff report, I know you've really highlighted some of the results of the survey. But the survey gives us public perceptions, and those public perceptions are really important and valid, and we need to address them. But I would point out that some of those public perceptions are not necessarily grounded in reality. When we've looked at the number of units that have been created and the percentage of them that are actually permanent affordable units, that actually is a much greater percentage than I think the public perceives. And I think that if we're going to have this kind of community dialogue, it's got to be based not on perception, but on the reality of how many units have actually been created, how many of them are actually affordable and permanently affordable. Some of the comments from the public also concern me. The idea that reducing the number of units on a site is going to increase the number of affordable units is just not grounded in reality. The number of the price that people are going to need to make a development feasible is based on the cost of land. And if you're reducing the number of units that can be built on that site, they're just going to have to charge more for the units that are constructed to cover the cost of the land and the construction. So I understand that people may want to have a reduction in development, but to think that that's going to increase the supply of affordable housing is just not dealing with reality. So I think that before we move forward with something like this, we have to have a broader conversation and a conversation that's more grounded in reality.
Thank you. I wanted to say just a couple of things also about this item. I agree with Councilmember Heilman that we did ask the staff to look at that, and I think this is another friendly amendment to that direction that we gave them. I don't think this is counter to that, and I think more importantly, and potentially more surprising, is that our state has, I think it's more than 100 bills about housing currently in the legislature. And one of them is SB 50, which could potentially rezone our entire city to be 5 stories. Every property. Every single property in the city would be zoned to 5 stories or more. And that's an extraordinary impact. And this idea clearly is not necessarily at the other end, but it's pretty far from that idea. So we'll have to figure out exactly where all of this lands, but I see it, we all see that the development in our city, since we got rid of height averaging, has changed our neighborhoods in ways that most of us are unhappy with. And at the same time, our state has added more and more incentives and bonuses to anyone who has a piece of property to develop it into housing, which I think is the greater good that all of us on this council and probably everyone who's ever sat in one of these seats has been interested in more housing in our city, especially more housing that is within reach of people's budgets. And I just wanted to say to Mr. Martin that the information in that article that I wrote came from the city's own 2016 housing study that was published in 2017. So perhaps maybe more than 175 people have moved here in the last 20 months, but there's also a fairly comprehensive piece about the number of rent control units that have been taken off the market, and it is pretty close to the number of new units that have been built, and I think that's what you were getting at. And as I've said from this chair more than a dozen or 20 times, we don't have a luxury housing crisis. We have an affordable housing crisis, and more luxury housing does bring with it 20% affordable housing. And plus, our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, under the leadership of John Heilman for decades, and all of us who have sat here, has developed hundreds of additional housing units in standalone affordable buildings. So housing has never left the top of our mind. It's just that when land costs $20 million an acre or more, the cost of making the housing is very high. And to park cars for micro units would mean that if you had 20 micro units, you'd have to have a 24-car garage. That's never happening. That would be a $4,500 a month, 400 square foot apartment. I mean, that's why you get 5 units that are $4,500 a month, because you can make a 7-unit parking lot that doesn't have 6 levels of parking. It has 1 level of parking. And we don't need to go through the pro forma of developing an affordable housing or any kind of housing site, but I think our mistrust of the development process is probably wise, but the outcome, not just in West Hollywood, but across the region, is that we are making more and more affordable housing and not enough. I mean, more and more market rate housing and not enough affordable housing. And I would just say one more thing, and I'm sorry I'm talking so long, but our local government cities nearby, Culver City doesn't have any affordable housing plan. The city of Los Angeles has almost no affordable housing plan. The city of Beverly Hills is antagonistic to affordable housing. This city, its 2 tiny little square miles, has made about 1,000 units in 35 years, far more than all of those other cities. So I think it's regrettable that a big building shows up in an R4 neighborhood that nobody expected next to a 10-unit dingbat that has 5 spaces of tuck-under parking. But that zoning was put in place in the 1970s. And it's just now that the land costs and the development pro formas and the people with money to move in are all aligned. And all of that will unalign itself and realign itself to something else one day. But for now, I think that's where we are. So I have seconded this item. I would like to see it move forward. I think Councilmember Horvath wants to speak, and then maybe we'll take a vote.
You opened a door for me to add one comment that I forgot to in my council member comments, that there was a recent report issued that analyzes the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, RHNA, that thing we reference, housing development targets, and the report found that 1 out of every 6 jurisdictions in the state is not participating in the reporting process. However, West Hollywood received the highest score, to be commended, awarded to all 539 jurisdictions in California, and we are the only jurisdiction that has already met or exceeded our RHNA allocation for all income levels. And I think that's speaks to the housing crisis and affordability crisis we're experiencing throughout the state. We need to see other cities stepping up in the way that we have as a community, and I think that's very important, a very important part of the process collectively and regionally. I would like to see I would like to help this move forward. I'm concerned about only A, B, C, D, and E being specific direction. So I'm wondering if we could generalize the recommendations to deliver this back to the Urban Design and Architecture Studio with these as possible suggestions, opening the door for them to come back with other suggestions as, you know, they take a look at these and see what might work.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't limit it. I mean, these are things that they need to think about. I'm not saying that we limit it. How's that?
Sure, yeah, I wasn't clear because the recommendation explicitly says to reflect the following, and so I don't want to necessarily be that specific. So I guess that was my question, is if we could offer those as suggestions and leave it open for other things to come back as well.
Okay, I mean, I'd like to see it be considered because when we just give suggestions, sometimes then they're not looked at. So I would say that to look at these things, limited but not limited to.
Including but not limited to. Sure.
Okay,
That works.
that works for me.
Any more comments before we take a vote on this motion? Seeing none. All right, the motion passes 3-1. Now we will go to, thank you very much. We'll go to item 5C, consideration of measures directed at Mayor John Duran. Mr. City Attorney, you prepared this. Would you like to open our conversation?
I did. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This item was prepared at the request of council at your last meeting. Since the publication of the agenda, Mayor Duran has indicated that he has decided to relinquish his position as mayor. Consequently, with respect to item number 1 listed in the discussion portion of the staff report, that item is now, half of that item is now moot. The other half of that item would be that it's my recommendation that the council elect a mayor to serve out John Duran's term. And then when the item comes back to you in April relative to mayoral terms, the city council can then proceed accordingly. Otherwise, the items listed in the background and analysis portion of the report relative to measures that that may be taken tonight are pretty self-explanatory. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have relative to those items, and that would conclude my report.
Are there any items before we hear from members of the public? I just have one question. Would we also be selecting a new mayor pro tem? I know it doesn't say that here. Is that something we have a choice about, or could not do or do?
Well, that depends on who you elect as mayor.
Cheers. Fair enough. I think we get the answer. That said, members of the public, we have, I guess, 4 members. Mr. Mike Gurley, to be followed by Dennis Gleason.
I'm sorry, I forgot to delete them. They actually spoke under public comment.
Thank you very much. Mr. Alan Strasberg, to be followed by Steve Martin.
Good evening. My name is Alan Strasberg, and I have been a resident of West Hollywood for 27 years. I have lived my life in those decades as a comfortably, openly gay man, in a hamlet created through decades of civil rights advances made possible by legends a generation or more my older. It has been an embarrassment to watch the damage done to West Hollywood by the monumental arrogance and antics of Mr. Duran. The reach of this sad spectacle has spanned the continent and even the globe. The rights earned by legends such as Ivy Bottini and Morris Kite are not a license to practice the body behaviors of non-consensual physical or verbal assault that have been brought to us in this pathetic chapter in West Hollywood's history. The council has enabled this behavior through such actions as failing to take a stand on an actual vote for the ceremonial title of mayor. And while I understand the need for comity, by forming quaint alliances of convenience and political expediency, you are first a deliberative body demanding arm's-length relationships, not country club friendships. I've read more than enough comments and endorsements that call to protect the history and culture of gay West Hollywood and the quaintness that is Boys Town, a moniker which is as sophomoric as it is offensive. No one, not Mr. Duran, nor any member of this council, nor any civil rights leader holds the mantle of speaking for an entire community, nor do I purport to do so here. At your request, the city attorney has delivered to you a list of actions you can take to bear out the collective voices that have been expressed nationally by demanding at home the same standard that you attempt to apply to the likes of Donald Trump and others. I implore you to finally do the right thing and rebuke the actions of your colleague that have resulted in damaging divisions bordering on municipal civil war. I urge actions, plural, on agenda item 5C that comport with the broad spectrum of values of the rainbow of cultures you represent and are consistent with the public pronouncements you have made in the Me Too and Time's Up era, which movements are meant to create safe places for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strasburg. Steve Martin to be followed by Cole Edman.
Steve Martin, West Hollywood. I think that the council as a body needs to adopt all of the recommendations, particularly the hearing in regard to censure. I know that's a bitter cup for you, but it's something that the residents need. It's something that the city deserves. And it's something that the larger gay and lesbian community really demands. We have paid a very high price for John Duran over many, many years. I have worked with John Duran on gay and lesbian rights since before he lived in West Hollywood, when he was living in Orange County. I can just remember so many different instances. Back in 2013, when Chris Landavazo was running for city council, a member of our gay and lesbian advisory board endorsed him. That gentleman received a phone call from council member Duran demanding that he renounce his endorsement or face retribution. That young man came down, stood here, and resigned after informing the council what had happened. There were no consequences for those threats. I've had people that do business with the city say it's been impossible to do business with the city unless you give a contribution to the Gay Men's Chorus. John Duran's relationship with the owners of the San Vicente Inn helped pave the way for the loss of 2 rent-controlled units when they decided to expand onto Hilldale. You know, these are just all random thoughts, but I mean, just the example of Ivy Boutini being threatened with arrest when she spoke out against the Stormy Daniels presentation was a real disgrace. But this is long overdue, and I think people need to be able to come up and speak their minds and explain why they feel that you've enabled Mr. Duran. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Cole Edman to be followed by Amanda Goodwin.
Good evening, Cole Edman, City of West Hollywood. I'm here to echo the previous speakers and ask you, I'd beg you, and implore you to take action against John Duran. Please take all the actions necessary. He needs to be censured. There are young people looking at you who are watching at home saying, what are they going to do? John Duran gave the key to the city to a stripper and to a dancer, porn star, for the actions, denouncing the actions of Donald Trump. It's time to denounce his actions. He attacked me. I mentioned this at the last city council meeting. I wanted to tell him to his face. I told him I want to get involved in the city. And he said, oh, that's great, but I still want a blank, blank, blank. What is that? I'm a big boy, I can handle it. But I have spoken to countless other people. When I mentioned John Duran, there's a face made. And I said, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, well, there's a little bit of an insinuation. Every time I talk to him about anything, if it's a male in this city and walks on 2 legs, John Duran is going to make an effort to do something to make them feel uncomfortable. Please let the city know that that's not okay.
Thank you, Mr. Edman. Amanda Goodwin, anyone else wish to speak?
Amanda Goodwin, West Hollywood. You know, I just have a different view about this. I think that we all have to do the right thing, and nobody can make him do the right thing. John has to come to that conclusion himself, John Duran. Voters voted for him 2 years ago. They put him back in office. He wasn't really reprimanded. You know, I don't know if he's committed a crime. You know, many people step down when they've been accused of things because they do it because it's the ethical and the right thing to do, because they don't want controversy. They don't want to bring any shame to a city or to a council or to other people. I don't think shaming John Duran and constantly berating him and talking about what a horrible person he is works for John Duran. You know, I come from a sense of that. I have empathy for a person who obviously struggling with a lot of things in his life. It's coming to a head. He's either going to do the right thing or he's not. And then the voters will make the decision next time. Unless he's committed a criminal act, yes, I'm for it. But I just hope that he has it in his soul and his heart that John Duran finally listens to his moral compass and finally steps down from the city council and relieves the city of any more shame and any dark cloud, and allows another human being to come and take a seat on this council and bring a new energy and a new light to it, because I think we finally have gotten to the end of the road. And I hope, John Duran, if you're listening, you've done amazing things for this city, but I implore you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Larry Block, to be followed by Marco Colantonio.
Larry Block, West Hollywood. With relation to this item, I'd like to focus on one item, and that's the subcommittee assignments. About a month ago, we submitted a letter to John D'Amico and John Duran about a resident, an Emmy Award-winning director resident who wanted to put Pride TV on TV. And I was told that it will be handed to the subcommittee of D'Amico and Duran, and I'd like to see immediate action on that committee. I understand perhaps the head of CSW has conflicts with Mr. Duran. We're not moving that item forward at all. We need some time to plan Pride TV that a resident offered for a very low budget, and an Emmy Award-winning director offered to put on the Pride TV for our residents this year. And if we waste another month going with all this stuff, we're not doing the business of the city. So that's one thing that I would really encourage. Second thing, business of the city, is I am really glad to tell everybody that I have an Airbnb license, home sharing license, number 19-001. I'm the first person who's paying taxes for 19 to register their Airbnb unit. And for those of you who have not registered your Airbnb unit, I tell you, it feels really, really good to be able to tell people that you're legal, you're welcome, and everything else. So I encourage everybody to register their units and stop paying the city the dues. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Block. Mr. Colantonio, be our last speaker.
Marco Colantonio again. Good evening, council members, Mayor Pro Tem, City Manager, City Attorney. I've searched my conscience. I respect John. I considered him a friend and a mentor. I think 5C is about doing what's in the best interest of the city of West Hollywood and not in consideration of what's best for John Duran. I think he's clearly put himself before that. I've suffered at the brunt of John's body comments. I felt sexually harassed, but let it roll off because I'm in my 50s. I respected him and considered him a friend. I've also met young people, people on the chorus, the gay men's chorus, and it breaks my heart when I say, oh, you must know my friend John Duran, and they say, that's sleazebag. Or they make comments like, my friends on the chorus have told me to stay away from him. On and on it goes. As I know and have seen, you always do what's in the best interest of the city of West Hollywood. Let's put the city of West Hollywood first in your decision this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colantonio. That's our last speaker, is that correct? Thank you. All right. Council members, would anyone like to go first? Or not last? Well, I guess I will go first just to ask another process question. I think that in the direction to the city attorney at our last meeting, there was also a couple of other questions that I don't see answered here, and I wondered if you were planning to address those on a separate agenda item, liability for the city, an ethics question, that sort of thing.
No, I wasn't planning to answer them at a future time. I don't really see any liability issues here at all that I can think of, and so I didn't address that subject. And I really wasn't sure what was meant by the question about ethics issues. And so, if the council wants to, elaborate on those questions, I can try to answer them. But I really didn't understand from the minutes that I read from the meeting exactly what was being asked of me.
Okay, fair enough. So I guess if we wish to revisit that, we can raise it again and provide additional specificity as part of that effort. Okay, Councilmember Heilman.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who spoke tonight. I think the reluctance to jump into speaking tonight is because none of us really wants to be in a position where we're having to deal with allegations of misconduct by our colleague. And I don't think any of us wants to be in a position where we're publicly addressing those kind of concerns. I know that's not why I ran for office, and I'm sure it's not why my colleagues ran for office. Let me first say that I'm glad that John is feeling better physically, that he is out of the hospital. I know that he has a long way to go in terms of his recovery. Contrary to some of the speakers earlier, he has serious physical health problems, and he is recovering from those, and I certainly want to wish him well. And I appreciate that most people, whether they support him or oppose him, also wished him well during his recent hospitalization. I think that speaks to what a great community West Hollywood is, that we are a compassionate community, and that we really do care about one another, even when we disagree with each other. I'm also very appreciative and thankful that John has stepped down as mayor. I'm sure that was not an easy decision for him, but I think it was the right decision for the city. I think it's also the right decision for him. I think that spares us of taking action under item number 1 on the agenda. The allegations that have been made have not been fully investigated through the city's investigative process, but John's reactions to those allegations is especially troubling, I think, for many of us, because those responses seem to demonstrate either a lack of understanding of the city's policies regarding harassment, or a lack of understanding that those policies are applicable to all of us. I know that the city manager and the city attorney have worked diligently on this item, and I want to thank them both for their hard work on this. I know that some people in the community are really interested in punitive measures. I'm really more interested in protecting the city and making sure that we have preventative measures so that we do everything possible to protect the city's reputation and protect the city from any adverse impacts. The recommendations in the staff report, obviously I think we need to restrict his ability to travel on city funding. I think we also need to look at some other recommendations that are not included in these recommendations. I think we should be ensuring that at any meeting at City Hall, when he's meeting with city staff, that either the city manager or his designee is present at all times. I think we should make sure, given the allegations about some of his emails, we need to make sure that his city emails are reviewed and evaluated, and make sure that the city manager does that. In terms of a resolution of censure, I think all of us in our own various ways have already censured him. I don't know that that resolution is actually needed, given the fact that we've all spoken out about his behavior and his reactions. So that's kind of what I'm looking at in terms of moving forward. I think that accomplishes what our goal really should be here, which is to do everything we can to prevent any occurrence in the future and do everything we can to protect the city and the residents and the employees and the commissioners of the city from any kind of misconduct.
Thank you, Councilmember Heilman. Either one of my, Councilmember Meister?
Yeah. I agree with Councilmember Heilman. I do think that we need to deny him the privilege to travel on city business at city expense, and if there are expense reimbursements for city-related business. I agree that we've all given statements at least once, showing our disapproval of this behavior, and I don't know that the resolution of censure is not going to change anything, and it's not. I don't think that it does anything really, except to state what we've already stated. Regarding removal from city council subcommittees, I think that if someone's on council, they should have to do the work. We will have a new, mayor and mayor pro tem, so that would take off finance and budget. I'm fine about working with John on Laurel Avenue, so I don't have a problem with that. And I think, my colleagues can talk about the subcommittees that you work with him on. And I also agree with, the safeguards at City Hall that we need to include. And the reason for I had brought up the ethics issue, Mike, and the idea was that maybe we needed somebody who specializes in ethics matters to be able to look at what's going on outside the city and how it affects the city, and what maybe there are things that we can include in our guidelines that we don't have in there now to move forward. We have a code of conduct, and maybe we're missing some things.
Councilmember Horvath?
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Heilman is correct. I think nobody wants to be in the position where we are being asked to what is perceived as past judgment over one of our colleagues. In fact, people elect each of the council members with the understanding and expectation that we work together. So this is quite a difficult position, and I hope that no council, present or future, ever has to deal with this sort of circumstance again. I think that's why we asked the city attorney to come back with the full range of options that are available to the city council to make sure we're making a clear statement and taking a clear stance on what's possible, and that's what's been presented to us tonight. I think I want to focus on what the item actually is, which is about actions that we can take regarding Mayor Duran. But I do think it's important to restate something that was mentioned in earlier comments. The state's law is not wait till somebody tells you no. The state law that was passed is yes means yes. And so with respect to the culture that we are trying to create in this city, and the culture that we are trying to create throughout the state, I think it's very important to restate that yes means yes is the law of the state of California. And that is a significant cultural shift, but it's an important one because of the stories that have come forward, because of stories we hear in our own community. And so I know that there are stories that we've heard here, there are stories that have been reported to us individually, there are stories that are being investigated and have been investigated here in West Hollywood, but this is a broader issue. And so, but I do believe that in the context of this discussion, making sure that we highlight the importance of this yes means yes law and actually enforcing it, not just as a law, but in our culture, is essential. That is the only way we will shift our culture, and it doesn't just apply to women who experience harassment by men. It applies in all aspects of our culture, especially and including LGBT culture. That said, I think that we did ask the city attorney to come back with a full range of options, which is what's presented to us tonight. I'm open and supportive of what additional options have been presented. I do think that leaving censure on the table as these investigations move forward may be important. I think given some of the allegations that are out there, I don't think that taking it off the table is necessary, but I don't necessarily hear a majority support for that. But I do think that we need to make sure that we're sending a clear message that the kind of behavior we want in West Hollywood, especially from our leaders, is behavior that supports a welcoming environment, does not deter people from participating or feeling welcome in our community, and certainly does not intimidate, harass, or in other ways harm people in our community. That's not what we expect of our leaders.
Thank you, Councilmember Horvath. I just have a few additional comments. I think, 3 years ago, I think it was March 16th of 2016, I sat down there and spoke very directly to John Duran about the allegations of harassment that were rocking our city at the time, and very plainly spoke about what I believed was the HR department's and the city manager and the city attorney's lack of attention at the time. And I want to say that they have, our HR department, our city manager, and our city attorney have done an extraordinary job over the last 3 years, making sure that our city employees, people who visit the city, others, would not find themselves in a compromised situation. Unfortunately, it appears that that's happened outside of the purview of our city. And it's troubling. And as Councilmember Heilman said, John's response to that is equally troubling, perhaps even more troubling, because all of us, well, I won't speak for any of my colleagues, I woke up several mornings reading the newspaper and going like that, thinking, who is this person and what is he saying? It's unrecognizable to me, and it's not representative of our community. And John knows me for my tough love regarding him, and I do love John, and I hope that he can find a path out of this, and he can repair his relationship with the community and with each of us individually, and certainly with people who have made allegations regarding his behavior. I think the recommendations of this report are exactly right, including the additional ones from Councilmember Heilman. I do think it's worth putting forward a resolution of censure. Its value is not in even necessarily its obvious face towards Councilmember Duran, but its value is its face towards our public. towards the community, towards the city employees, towards everyone who has an interest in fairness. John will have his opportunities. He can generate them, as many of them as he wishes, to set the record straight and correct what he may or may not believe is the public opinion of his actions. But our city, I think, needs to put down in writing at a moment in time, this time, how it is we are responding to those allegations. I am a member of the subcommittee for just give me a moment, for the CSW Pride Subcommittee, and that's probably a fairly tricky thing for John to be doing at this time, and I would ask my colleagues to consider replacing him this summer. As an effort to streamline the set of things that clearly need to be done in the next 90 days in order to get a couple 100,000 people to our city to enjoy that weekend. So those are my thoughts about this report. I do want to thank the city attorney for its clear, plain language. I think there was very little confusion on the part of the residents or interested parties, what options were available to us and how we might address them. And with that, I want to again express my thanks to the city attorney for making that clear. So with all that said, we've spoken. I see Councilmember Heilman would like to speak again, and you are next. Before you speak, I just want to say, if there's any member of the audience who wishes to speak, I think this is going to start to wrap up. So we would like to do this, and Councilmember Heilman.
Well, I was listening to everybody and was going to try to propose a motion, and I noticed that there weren't any times on items 2 and 4, so I was going to suggest that we move the recommendations. Move recommendation number 2 for a 1-year period. On item number 3, remove John from the CSW Pride Committee. Item number 4 for a 1-year period. Add 2 additional conditions: that the city manager or designee monitor his email, and that the city manager or his designee be present at any meeting that John is having with city staff. And those were my recommendations. I'm not sure that there is agreement on item number 5, the resolution of censure. So one of the things we could conceivably do is defer that for a period of time, and as Lindsay suggested, hold that open as something that we could impose at a later date. But I don't know where council is on that. So my motion would include everything that I just said.
Okay. And we have one more speaker, which is Esteban Montemayor.
Good evening, Council. I am not speaking in any capacity from CSW or anywhere else that I'm involved in. But I'm speaking as a resident who has lived here, who has considered Mayor John Duran a friend, even a mentor. I have known him for the last several years, 8 years, I think now. He introduced me to West Hollywood, along with Lauren, got me involved politically here. I admire him a great deal. I think he has done so much for this community. I think he has done a remarkable job on behalf of the LGBT community advocating for all of us. But at the end of the day, we have to consider the actions that we have all witnessed and that some of us have been recipients of, including myself. And it's unfathomable to me that we would not move forward with a censure of some kind. I think it's really important that the city really consider that with one voice tonight, that we make clear, because there is not clarity, with all due respect, there is not clarity. There are some who have spoken, there are some who have not, there is uncertainty from the community. I think we need that to heal. I'm saying that from my heart. And I was not planning to speak tonight. I really wasn't. And I thank now our soon mayor, John D'Amico, for the idea of removing him from the subcommittee that I'm involved in, because I think that's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montemayor. So we have a... Why don't you speak at the mic and then you can fill out a sheet?
When two people like want to get married, like when I want to tell the world this is the most important person in the world to me, I get married to that person and I call him my husband. When people like you have a colleague who has done something reprehensible, you censure him. It is your, and it's a verb. It's not. It's like it's a, you know. It's like it contains the power of so much more than what you think, because it's all the things that you said, John, and it's all the things that he said. So I just want you to think about that. It's not something that, well, let's like wait and see, you know? It's do it now, like, you know?
Would you please just fill out a slip? It's government, man. You got to follow the rules. Thanks. All right. So, I'm open to considering something. Okay. So, Councilmember Heilman, you made a motion, but you didn't press the button. So you've pressed the button now. We have a motion. Is there a second? But I think there is.
Are we going to include the censure then?
I'm open to it, but I think we are already... I think we're already censuring him in a lot of ways. We're censuring him.
Please, wait. We're just going to have a conversation, and if people want to speak, you can absolutely have a couple minutes to do so. But please don't. We're trying to really be super thoughtful, and it's really important, I think, to all of us and how we finish this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that we need to recognize that the actions that we're taking tonight are, in effect, a censure of him. When we're restricting his travel, when we are requiring the city manager to be present for meetings that he's having with city staff, when we are removing him from an important subcommittee, I think those are the real important. I know that there are people in the audience who feel that censure is the most important thing, but we're actually taking tangible actions to restrict his ability and his conduct while he's a city official. So I think that, in my mind, is more meaningful. I understand why people want to, have that expression of censure. But for me, the more important thing, as I said, is protecting the city and taking the tangible steps that we're taking tonight. But if the council really wants to censure, if a majority does, then maybe we need to, I would like us to act in unison tonight, because I think it is really important to show that we are united in expressing condemnation for his reactions to these allegations and his comments about people who've come forward and reported sexual harassment. Those are not becoming of him. They're not reflective of our policies. So I want to make sure that that is clear and that we're united in that respect.
And I would say that that was my hope, that if we did adopt a resolution of censure, that it would clearly state what we are deciding this evening and clearly state our policies with respect to the importance of, taking care of human beings and human endeavor, and really make clear to the public reaffirm our commitment as a city council and as a city, as well as make clear that what happened is not acceptable. So that was my hope of this item.
And maybe that's what we really need to do, is have that kind of clear articulation from the council. I'm concerned about what Mike has in the report, that if we do have a resolution of censure, that it would have to come back to the council, that Councilmember Duran would then have an opportunity. I don't think that furthers healing. I think that just continues to give him another platform, and I would rather us resolve this issue tonight. So maybe if there's some way that we can express that view without having that process, with a resolution coming back to us, with a hearing yet again, with Mayor Duran present, I don't think that's helpful to the community, nor do I think that's helpful in terms of healing the community. So I'm looking to Mike for some guidance here.
I think that the procedural protections that I discussed in the report would apply to an oral censure no differently than to a written censure. And so while I don't think that those protections apply to the concrete types of actions that were included in your original motion, because I don't believe that there is necessarily the same sort of, I don't believe that there's the same sort of due process considerations applicable to such matters as denial of travel or denial of expense reimbursements. An expression of disapproval in the nature of a censure orally, I think, does require that sort of advance notice and an opportunity to respond.
So, John, I guess you need to accept the idea of a censure or remove your motion, and one of us will make one.
Well, let me ask, do we really want to have another hearing with John here to respond to a censure resolution, or can we tonight, without orally or in writing censuring him, can we express our condemnation of behavior that is so contrary to the city's policies?
Well, it seems to me you've already done that.
Okay.
In this discussion.
Maybe we want to do that as a formal statement from the council that is not directed at John, but is a formal statement that expresses our condemnation of sexual harassment in any form and condemns any attempt to shame victims, any attempt to intimidate victims from coming forward. I think that is what we could do tonight and try to get this matter resolved.
I agree.
Okay. So then my motion is going to include item number 2 for a 1-year period. Item number 3, the removal of John from the CSW Pride Committee. Item number 4 for a 1-year period. Item number 5 would have the city manager review emails and the city manager or designee attend meetings. And the final would be for the council to issue a public statement expressing our condemnation of sexual harassment, our condemnation of any efforts to shame victims, and expressing the city's views on that.
Councilmember Heilman, can we also include the actions we took this evening in that public statement?
Yes, absolutely.
Do my colleagues have anything more to say? Any substitute motions, any additions?
Look, this is a hard conversation to have as a community, and I have been out there knocking doors, talking to people, and I've had this conversation about 10 times a day with people. So I struggle. And I appreciate the work that Councilmember Heilman did with our city attorney to try and find a way for this to be the beginning of healing and having a stop to, hopefully, a stop to this conversation. The problem is the conversation is going to continue because people have feelings about what has happened, and people expect better of our community as a whole. It's difficult because what is available to us as a council will not fully satisfy some of the desires in the community, and it may not fully satisfy what the standards that we hope to hold ourselves to, because there's a lot that feels like it could be part of this report that isn't here. And when we see this behavior happen with people who are more distant from us, more different from us, and perhaps with different political views than us, it's been very easy to call things out. And so when it's closer to home with people we know, it's much more challenging, and I think that's what we're all struggling with. I think there will be some disappointment if we don't move forward with what the city attorney has recommended here before us tonight. But I don't know that even if we did all 5 of these things, that it's actually going to end up with the result that we desire. I do not want to continue this conversation. I don't want to have to discuss my personal life as a result of my mayor talking about it in the press. I don't want to talk about these things as a community anymore. And I think that's what we're trying to do as a city council. It is very difficult because we're trying to put an end to something that, as I think one member of the public said so eloquently, ultimately does not reside with us. We can end the conversation among the 4 of us. I think all 4 of us would be very glad to end the conversation. And I think the people of this community would be more than happy to see the conversation end. Ultimately, it may continue depending on the participation of one person. And so we are, I think what I'm in agreement with is us acting in a unified voice, being on the same page, and working together as a council to try and begin this form of healing. And this, I think that's what we're trying to do with this motion tonight.
I'll just say that I don't know that it's going to make a difference whether we do a resolution or not in terms of what the reaction is going to be. I think there's still going to be a response from John. So whether it's a formal, informal, it's going to happen. So maybe we just prepare it, because we are doing that. We are expressing disapproval of a colleague, and either way you look at it, we're going to have the same response, and we are going to be discussing it at least one more meeting.
It appears we have another speaker. Do we wish to hear from Jack Klein? Mr. Klein?
I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. This is like the third meeting, I think, about this topic. I think we need to move on as a community, get this behind us. At first, I didn't think he should be censored, but then I kind of changed my mind during the meeting listening. I think we should go ahead and censor him just to do everything to show that the city is against harassment of all kinds, and just do it and get it over with so we can move on. And I think John should we elected him as council, so we can remove him, so we can vote him out next time. And I think he needs some treatment. I think he's sick, and I think he needs some help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. So it seems like, as Councilmember Meister mentioned, we should expect that there will be more discussion of this, and I think that's probably correct. And I just want to, I want us to move as a body, and I think we all want to do that. And if we talk about censuring John, it would most likely be not unlike a statement we would issue. So it does seem that this would be perhaps an opportunity also for the healing to begin, should it happen in this room, and John choose to respond that way. So I get the sense that there's sort of a bell curve or some kind of, we're all in the same category of wanting to do something specific and wanting also to not wake up in the morning and find out all kinds of things about ourselves that we didn't know.
I did get some very nice texts after that last interview he did. I think that what I'm concerned about is I want us to move back to doing the business of the city, and I think we all do. And if we do prepare a resolution of censure, that means this is going to be on the agenda at another meeting, and it means that there'll be more distraction from us doing the business of the city. So while this is part of the business of the city, I want us to focus on the issues that the residents really have as their primary concern. And I think if we can get this resolved tonight in some amicable way, that I think would go a long way to begin the process of moving us back to doing the actual business.
I guess I'm gonna ask that we prepare a censure and we put it on the agenda, and that don't do that. I'm just gonna ask that we do that, and that we just acknowledge that it is part of what we need to do, and that it will be on the agenda, so only one of us can talk with Councilmember Duran about it. But perhaps there is a way for us to work with him and work with the community to have, certainly there will be some part of this that will be about disruption and about unhappiness and the kinds of disturbing things that we hear, but there could also be the beginnings of healing. It could be an opportunity for John to reach forward, and perhaps we and others would see that in him and begin us moving away from this. Because I think we're not going to move away from this until some kind of moment happens, and that, I think, might be the moment.
And the moment's going to happen regardless.
Yes.
The moment's going to happen, so.
Yeah. So, well, it is a substitute motion with all the items that Councilmember Heilman mentioned, as well as a resolution of censure that would identify the items the business we covered in tonight's agenda, a strong statement about our city's sexual harassment policies and our commitment to being the kind of place where all people are safe and should feel safe. So how do I make that a substitute motion?
I can withdraw.
Okay. There we go. It probably does, and
All right, you're making a substitute motion. Does it include all of the other items?
Yes. Yes. And for the city attorney and city manager to prepare a resolution of censure.
I'm going to vote along with my colleagues, but I just want to make sure that we're all prepared. Because what we are, I know we want to protect the city and the city's reputation. What we're essentially inviting is another public meeting with all of the people who think John should resign, all of the people who think he should be censured, and undoubtedly John will have his supporters there as well. So I don't know that that is really going to be helpful in terms of the city and the city's reputation. But I understand that this is what the council wants to do. I think we just need to be prepared for what that is going to look like when this comes back to us.
I also think you need to be prepared for what the resolution is going to look like. And I'm not exactly sure sitting here right now what it's going to look like, but keep in mind that we don't have a record of proven allegations or investigation reports that have necessarily proven conduct. And so it is going to have to be very carefully worded in order to avoid making assertions that are not provably true and that are not substantiated by evidence and that are not substantiated by the record. We have a lot of innuendo. We have a lot of unsupported allegations, and I would be uncomfortable including those in any resolution of censure. Consequently, you know, it's going to be a challenging task to put together a resolution that ultimately would meet the test for something that I would be comfortable with, and I think ultimately you would be comfortable with.
We do have an independent report that was conducted by an investigator hired by the city that identified inappropriate behavior. So please, we're trying to get to this conclusion. I think we do have something documented.
Well, there are a variety of reasons why I would likely not want to reach back into that.
I understand. But I know that there will be perception. We're also dealing with a problem of perception here, and I want to be clear about how we're communicating with the public about what we know and what we don't know.
And I appreciate the complexity of the task we're assigning you. I think what we have all agreed to and may vote on in a moment is that we wanted to have a record of what we decided this evening. We wanted to have a recommitment of our city to fairness and our sexual harassment policy. And I think there's a fairly strong public record of public statements made by Councilmember Duran that motivated a good deal of this interest, which was, for me, certainly the allegations are out there, but I am more interested in the kinds of ways in which he represented the city. And so I think perhaps that's a guideline for the direction you might take. I mean, you can open the LA Times website and find a good 6 or 8 things to perhaps talk about. And those are uncomfortable for some and complicated, and but I think most of us would agree might not be the best way to represent the city as an elected official.
And I'm certainly not expressing a disinclination to go into an uncomfortable zone. I'm simply saying that I would want to limit it to that which is verifiable.
100%.
And factual.
Yes. And we know what we did tonight, so that's one good third of it. And you know our strong sexual harassment policies as a city and our commitment to human rights. And the third part is the record that is verifiable.
Yeah, I understand. I will be having to keep in mind certain confidentiality issues, certain rights of privacy, and I'm just indicating that as a consequence, it's not entirely clear to me what I will ultimately produce for you to review and to consider, but it may not look exactly like what you might think it's going to look like, is all I'm saying.
I just want to say I feel a little bit like you're being Lucy and I'm Charlie Brown. That you put out here a football that we were supposed to kick and now you're pulling it away.
No, I'm not. I'm just wanting to make sure you have realistic expectations, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any more comments from anyone? All right, so we will vote on the motion item. Oh. And the motion passes 4-0. And I believe we have one more bit of business for item 5C. No, we have one more bit of business for item 5C, which is that one of us leaves this room, the mayor. Please.
I'd like to just suggest that this be a temporary, for, I don't know, however many, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2 months, whatever, because we're going to have an election tomorrow and a newly elected council that we won't have verification of who those people are until at least Friday or even the following week from the county.
Well, we are looking to certify the election April 1st.
So I think that
you can place into nomination someone to serve out John's term as mayor.
Which I think was what you said at the beginning.
Right,
So-
and that ends in
May
April.
20th is the
May 20th.
that we would be installing the new and electing April 15th. So
But really, it's still April 15th when the new
Okay.
mayor would be. Is that acceptable?
acceptable.
All right. So I guess we'll take nominations for the mayor.
I would nominate John D'Amico.
I accept. Does anyone else want to nominate anyone?
By acclamation.
All right. Shall we vote by voice? All those in favor, say aye.
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 any opposed?
Hearing none opposed. All right. Now, based on earlier questioning, we need a mayor pro tem.
Who is next in rotation? I don't remember.
Lindsay.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Then
Councilmember
I'll
Horvath.
nominate Lindsay.
All right. Lindsay, Councilwoman Lindsay Horvath has been nominated. Anyone else wish to make a nomination? All right. Shall we do a voice vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Hearing none opposed. All right. We have a new mayor and a mayor pro tem. You all. Now we're going to go to item 2O. That's correct? Yes. Informational materials for block-by-block security ambassadors.
Councilmember Heilman
Yeah,
pulled it.
I pulled this, and I understand what you're trying to do here, and I'm supportive. I'm just a little bit concerned that I don't want to see the block-by-block people converted into, focusing on jaywalking and other things. They should have these materials, but I think the public wants their primary focus to be on the serious issues.
Right.
And so as long as that's our understanding that we will prepare materials, but that isn't going to change their primary function.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The impetus was that people, they can't cite, they can't give citations, but at least if they could give something that says you're not supposed to ride a scooter on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree. They need to be out there, doing what they're doing.
With that understanding, I'll move the item.
All right. The item has been moved and seconded. If we'd want to mark your votes. And it passes 4-0. I believe that's everything. All right.
I have one other council comment. I forgot to make this announcement. It's the Persian New Year coming up, and we have an event here at the council chambers on March 16, 2019, and I want to make sure everyone is invited. Well, I also want to wish all of our Iranian American residents a Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. This will conclude tonight's City Council meeting. Its next regularly scheduled meeting will be Monday, March 18th at 6:30 p.m. in this room. Thank you all very much for coming.